Um, so we've got
Yeah,
two of what you have very accurately deemed the progressives, and probably
yeah,
the
yeah,
most progressive in
yeah,
terms of, right,
yeah,
we are the hipster director of football, switch the manager out and it doesn't matter,
yeah.
Moneyball, European, Marius Dijkhausen type club in the whole world.
There's a
I
name.
Yeah, there's a
I
name that
remember.
didn't last long. I like Brentford. It's very
Yeah,
hip, very hipster, isn't it?
yeah. They're the thing that defines Brentford for me is the way they call their players by first names. We all have moaning Arsenal friends, over the last few years, and you kind of give them the shoulder. Come on, have a hug. We know, get it out. But it's always Ozil, it's always Czech, it's always Wiltshire, it's always Koscielny. Never first names. Talk to Brentford fans; they know them all by their first names, and to me, that kind of symbolizes the kind of intimacy there is. There's that bond. The players are physically nearer the fans when you're at the ground, but I also think emotionally they're a lot nearer the fans as well. It's something. It's just particularly unique. You could possibly argue it's the same in Millwall. We'll come on to them later, but definitely you see it in Brentford. There
Not
is that
not for
sense of
much not for
sense of
much
family.
longer. They've
No.
laid the first stones of the
Mm,
new stadium. Now, whether that changes the dynamic of everything, but
no.
just before we start, just run us through this model that they kind of work off, which is very statistics driven
Yeah.
and very
Yeah.
Billy Bean
Mm.
Moneyball, isn't it?
It is very much so. They've had. I mean, I remember one year they got a guy in. You're always interested to see who they're going to sign. One year they signed a guy from Chamois Niorte, and I was thinking, I hadn't heard of that football team. I think, oh, wow, I think they're French. Let's see. Let's go and find out. Their model of finding players is very statistical. It's very it's very analytical, and it was part of the reason Mark Warburton left in the end, I think. But it's not just the system of acquisitions. I remember the Dijkhuizen. I laughed when you mentioned his name because when we played them in one of the early games of the season, Dijkhuizen was blown away by the fact that he said they had an analyst who did nothing but throw-ins. Now, and people work out on average 2,000 hours a year, and I'm still trying to work out, can you have 2,000 hours worth of analyzing throw-ins? Maybe you can. Maybe you can. I don't know. But I could see that a hit was, it, it's, it's quite a remarkable, com- complicated level of science that they've taken the whole thing to. And but it's them. You work within the system, and the manager they've got now, Dean Smith. When did he get there? 20. He's been there
Two and a
since
half
December.
years.
Yeah, December 15. I think he's been there now. So he obviously fits the system well, and they like him. There is a thing as well. There's a sense of decency about Brentford. Certainly talking to the fans, they they're not up themselves. I the company I worked for used to have a head office in Brentford. It was in the bookselling world, and you'd see publishers coming out from West London, from Hammersmith, and from through Hammersmith. I mean, out from, I'm thinking of places like Bloomsbury, I should say more accurately, from Southwest London, and where the head office was on a place called Capital Interchange Way, and it overlooked a scrapyard, a railway line, and the elevated section of the M4, and you could see the the trauma on these West London publishers suddenly, used to Hampstead and used to the
Whole
North London.
Foods
Yes,
to
exactly.
bring
Whole
it full
Foods,
circle. There you
Whole
go.
Foods to bring a full circle, exactly. And you can see the shock of it. But I used to go down to Griffin Park, if I was staying over, rather than spending a night in a dim hotel, I'd say, well, let's go along to Griffin Park if there was a game. And this was when they were kicking around in Division 4, as it used to be. I'm very fond of Brentford. Smith fits their model. He is decent. They say about him. He does us proud. He speaks well and comes across as a very respectable man, and he suits our unfashionable club down to the ground. And being well regarded by everybody at the club counts for a lot,
We
I
know,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. Um, shall we mention the war?
Let's mention the
Um,
war.
Alan Judge.
Yeah, Dave and I had a big argument about this on the
Yeah,
podcast that's lasted
yeah.
about 2 years. What's your view? Go on.
It's remarkable, because I still love Brentford fans, and that hasn't changed. But it was it was one incident, and there's a spectrum of fans within. Every club has a spectrum of kind of sensible right the way out to fanatic. And the thing that struck me about this one was the sensible cohort of fans, the people who you would say would be reasonable, middle of the road, see it both ways, were adamant, politely adamant, but nonetheless adamant that they're the right. Ipswich fans were convinced it was a coming together. Brentford fans just as eagerly were convinced that it was a reducer that went wrong, but that there was a motive behind it. And it was really, I felt sad actually, because I thought maybe the reason sets of fans get along well is because the teams don't play each other for a long time, which is actually not a happy situation to be in. But that was my reading of it. Just felt it was quite unique. Interestingly, looking at what they've been saying about Ipswich and some of the comments on one of the forums, I think there's a sense that they might incline to think that's more of a McCarthy thing than an Ipswich thing, if that makes sense. They might link it with the brand of football rather than necessarily with us as a club
Well, and
playing like that.
he would love
Yeah,
that, wouldn't he? That
yeah,
his name comes above the stature of the club. Look, Harry,
yeah.
my take on it,
Interesting. Yeah,
yeah, my
yeah,
take on it, and we've done it to death, is look,
yeah,
it wasn't a hatchet job, but the
yeah,
analogy I would give is if I smash my car into some poor, hopeless, parked up car,
yeah,
I may not have deliberately smashed into that particular car, but if I'm speeding around all night slightly recklessly, and not seeming to take care of all the other cars that all
yeah,
pay their road fund license as well, it's a matter of time before I'm going to smash into one of them. And I
yeah,
just felt for a little, certainly that game, that
yeah,
Hyam was a a accident waiting to happen, and he
yeah,
was,
yeah,
he wasn't Gascoigne in the cup final where he was too hyped up, and it
yeah,
turned out that Gascoigne hurt himself, didn't he?
yeah. He did, and yeah,
And
yeah,
that was
yeah,
just all my thing, that
yeah,
this guy who was very wholehearted and not very talented, so the best thing he could do to stand out on the pitch was to
mm,
be more energetic, and
yeah,
got to do it safely though. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah,
my problem with it. I don't
yeah,
agree with um, Hyam being booed 2 years later, but Hyam handled that
yeah.
beautifully
No, he did. I
at
agree.
Griffin Park. He really did. But
Yeah, mm,
I think now Judge is back. It's very
yeah,
sad that a really good
yeah,
player lost 2 years of his best earning years, possibly of his career. But
mm,
move on now, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Okay, so just thought it worth mentioning because it was quite a unique one. And looking at the nature of Brentford as a club, it's
Well, which other club
it's
in England, Harry, would be experts on Luke Hyam other than Brentford? Do you know what
well,
I mean?
so yeah, good
Genuine
point.
like
Yeah,
interest
yeah,
between
yeah,
the two
yeah,
sets of fans.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Proximity.
I
Yeah,
was gonna ask you when you were talking about the this system for buying players. I think that they've done such a good job buying players that they can now sell for overinflated prices because people think it's good to buy from Brentford. I think
good
it's
point.
added a, I think it's added some value onto their players because they think they're so well scouted. If we buy from Brentford, we get a good player.
It's basically so that they can actually the due diligence that they do funds itself.
I think so.
Effect. Yeah,
I think people
yeah,
overpay for Brentford players. Brentford get good prices
they
for their
do.
guys. I think, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. They would certainly they got good prices from Birmingham last last
listen
summer.
to listen to episode 3 for our economic deconstruction of the West
Indeed, yes,
Midlands. How are
yes,
they
indeed.
looking? How are they looking player wise? Because again they've
It's
sold, haven't they?
again, it's the classic thing, as we saw with Preston, as we saw with Bristol, two in, two out at the time of speaking. John Egan, we talked about him earlier, the big kind of steel girder of a centre half, who's now gone to Sheffield United, and they've brought in Ezri Konza, who is come in from Charlton, again 20 years old, and a young prospect, and Flojo Flori of Josefsohn, who also quit the building, has been replaced by a chap called, and they like this guy, Saeed Ben Rama, Algeria international. They've picked up from Nice, and they've he played. Where did he go? He was on loan at Châteauroux last year in. I think he was there for a spell last season, which I think are in the French second division, if I'm not mistaken. So it's the classic. They've done their homework, and my guess is that if they hadn't been able to get those two, that one centre half, one three, use the word again, winger, they've got, they probably would have had about three or four other people, in that bit of the Venn diagram that they would have been able to bring in. So as I say, they have a system. The two additions worth mentioning, Konza, they like. They think he could be a class act, and him and Mepham together could be a very strong central defensive
Mm.
pairing.
They already
Lacking
had big
experience,
bids for Mepham. I think he's the next
yeah,
big sale, isn't he?
he might go, but they may again. They won't unless they, it's the balance of risk. I think Bieland turned down a new contract for them, so he's gone as well. So, but that was, that was anticipated, I think. But this guy, calm, collected, and very assured at the heart of the back four. All preseason friendlies, admittedly. And Ben Rama, they like. We won't miss Josefsson too much if he plays like that every week. And one thing they did say, he's fell over a few times, saw the ref was ignoring him, and then got on with it. Good vision, comfortable on the ball, and sort of somebody they think will acclimatise to English football. It's that thing. They got up into the championship a couple of years ago. They've established themselves in the championship. They now have a squad of seasoned players. So introducing and letting go, as I said, they're now controlling the terms of it. And the fans see that with absolute equanimity. They know that they're a selling club. They know this is how the model works. But they've seen, there's no sense of horror
But
about it
Harry,
because
we're
they know
finding,
they're
as
covered.
Ipswich fans, we're finding that can be quite exciting.
Oh yeah,
Out goes a Waghorn, in come four young
yeah,
guys. There might be
yeah,
another Waghorn in the
mm,
in the four guys that come
yeah,
in, mightn't there?
yeah,
So,
yeah.
how's the rest of the team look? Because
Uh,
I always thought Bentley was a very modern goalkeeper. This since Neuer and De Gea, the fashion is now for the goalies to be
yeah,
kind of pacey and
yeah,
tall and lanky and able to sprint to their edge of their box. Nothing
yeah.
like Bialkowski is, but
No, no.
he's a I'm going to stand on my line and you're not going to
Yeah.
get past me.
And,
But
not the Black Knight, none shall pass. Exactly. No,
exactly,
they did. They used to have, was it Button played for them? Was it David Button played for them
went to
before? And
Fulham, didn't he?
he's now with Fulham. But I know Murph, when we beat them 4-2 in that famous Boxing Day game, Murph rumbled him early because he wasn't. You need to be super confident with the ball at your feet like that.
Couldn't do
I
it,
think
could he?
Bentley is. I think it's part of their model of playing. That's what they expect the goalkeepers to do, and so Bentley is very much part of that. Back four, Dalsgaard played for Denmark in the World Cup. Konza, Mepham. Interesting, in one of the preseason games, they played Jenneris, who's normally a midfielder, a holding midfielder, but they
I
put him as a
saw
full back.
I saw Brentford at Norwich last December. They played a beautiful game, and Yanaris, who is known to podcast listeners for getting me some free tickets to Ipswich v Brentford once. Um, yeah, we won't go any
Yes.
further than that. He played, yeah, it's
Mm.
it's Cruyffian, isn't it? Well, I
Yeah,
can stick the centre midfielder at right back, and
yeah,
I love that. Great. I wouldn't like to be Yanaris and thinking, oh, hang on, I thought I was centre midfield, but now I'm playing at fullback. But
yeah,
we'll see it with Mr. Paul Hurst. Fullback
yeah,
in the Championship is going to become a very important position. I think some
yeah.
of them are almost playmakers, aren't they?
Well, they are. I mean, we saw what Fulham were doing with them. We joked
Well,
about
and
that in
Matt
a previous
Matt
podcast.
Doherty as well for
Yeah,
Wolves was brilliant,
yeah,
wasn't he? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's great. It makes for brilliant football. It really
Mm.
does. If in terms of entertainment. But the Warriors are there. They've got that rock solid midfield. They've got McEachran. They've got Sawyers. They've got Ryan Woods.
Oh, Woods.
Um, Woods. Yeah,
Oh, what a player. Yeah.
the terrier, the ultimate terrier. He really is.
Best,
Um,
best. Well, him and Kearney. Now Kearney's gone. I would make Woods the best deep line playmaker in the
yeah,
division.
yeah. He's
Excellent
brilliant.
player.
Yeah. Really, really good. There was one, although there's one thing, which one brief Brentford story. We're talking about them a lot, but it's funny. They did talk about when Diago Raga played for them. I think he's gone to Swindon. I spotted that. I think in one of the lines. He's certainly in the he's kind of League One level now. I think pace. I think might have been when he left Leeds, but anyway, he never scored a home goal. And there's this thing about holding midfielders scoring goals,
Yeah.
and I don't think he ever scored a goal at Griffin Park. And so you'd have some mundane game against, say, they were playing, I don't know. They said they were playing Preston at home, and it was a Tuesday night, and it was 1-1, and 75 minutes to go, not a lot happening, and then suddenly Toombs would get the ball, and he'd suddenly go bearing down on goal, and suddenly from everybody sort of nursing their Bovril from half time, all hell would break loose as they thought, it was a bit like Skews at Portman Road. There's something about holding midfielders.
Well, Makaleli famously
Yeah,
scuffed
yeah,
that penalty
the
and put the
penalty, yeah,
rebound in, didn't he?
yeah.
Yeah.
And we've had Skews do it. Centre halves, we know they score goals from corners. That's what they do. Wingers and everybody else scores goals, but holding midfielders is just a bit different, because they generally tend to hang back. But when they do get within striking range, it tends to be no more than within 30 or 40 yards of the goal. So when they do score, they always tend to be utterly memorable. I just thought it's just a side point. That's all. But it's something you always look out for when it happens because it's great fun. Yeah. Who else? I mean, yeah. They are
What
rock solid.
Watkins?
Watkins, yeah, Watkins. I have a friend who's an Exeter supporter, and they cry in their boots at the loss of him.
Mm.
He's no, he fits their model perfectly. He really does, and he's playing really well. In terms of their neat passing football played out from the back. They still think they need a striker. They want to get the cutting edge up front is the thing, and there is one of my other theories is that if Mitrovic had gone to Brentford rather than going to Fulham, I wonder whether the roles would have been reversed. It's one of those what if questions, and it's one for everyone to have a think about. But I just wonder sometimes a striker can augment all of those players that are playing around them. They can add 20% of them. And that's what Fulham are crying out for. And I do sometimes wonder just as equally, did Brentford miss a trick there? I don't,
Well, I would say what
what
I
if?
would say to that, Harry,
Yeah,
is I would say around the pitch, Fulham probably just 20% better in pretty much all the positions than
right.
Brentford.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say, but
yeah.
you're talking about Brentford,
Mm,
I don't know, like 10th up to sixth. That would make this. Interestingly
yeah,
enough, when we spoke to who was it? It was Dave, wasn't it? Yeah, Dave from Besotted. He said
yeah,
when they had Hogan, that
yeah.
they played quite direct, not obviously long ball, but right, let's try and put Hogan in behind. He said they looked better after he left. He said
That's
one
interesting.
of those classic
Yeah.
one of those classic ones of, oh,
Mm,
take a star out and everybody, you know, lose 50%. Everybody now
yeah.
contributes a little bit extra to make up
Mm.
that
That
percentage.
that's something that that's popped up in lots of clubs over the years. When a team brings a target man on, everybody suddenly starts going direct, and they don't do it. They just do it habitually because the
Mm.
target man is they have a big number 9 up there, so they can just it can unintentionally just changes the dimension of the play, even if a team hasn't actually decided to do that because it's an option that you always have. So yeah,
Wouldn't be
it's
surprised if he
interesting.
ended up back there on loan or something, Hogan.
Yeah,
I think I'm sure he's on a whacking great contract at Villa, isn't he?
yeah, he
And
would be.
they want to probably reduce wages. So,
Yeah, that
uh,
could come circle.
is it going to be
Briefly
good
to
enough for playoffs though, Harry?
well, their expectations are modest. If it, it's a strange one. They obviously want to make the top. They were there before. When Middlesbrough beat them in our year, but they said that if we're in the mix come the start of April, that success looks like being in the mix for the playoff place come the start of April. That's
And
what one of them said.
there'll be a period in the season where they'll win 7 games on the trot.
Oh yeah, no question. They'll
Always
be
seem to,
unplayable. Yeah,
yeah, always
yeah.
seem to, don't they?
Yeah, utterly stable, and they'll come into phase, and you just don't want to run up against them when they do that. I remember when they played, it was really funny. They played because when Ipswich play a team, I'll always go back and look at the 3 previous games, look at all the match threads, because that's where you find all the kind of small detail. Just okay, what's the what are the little things that fans are picking up on? And before we played them in one game, they played that wretched Blackpool team who were playing for under when the Oystons were when it was all going wrong, let's just say, under the owners, and Brentford had something like 45 shots on target. And on goal, I should say.
Probably
And
still
I
only
think,
scored two of them as well.
20, no, it was a 4-0 win. And one of the epic statistics was that the Blackpool centre half touched the ball 6 times, 5 of which were in kick-off situations.
Wow. Brutal. This
Brutal.
is another thing. You raise an interesting point. Probably all season as well, there'll be top shots per game and total shots. In the division. That's the thing, isn't it?
It is in their nature, let's just say. So it'll be entertaining. And as I say, they are the good guys, and let's see how they do.